The rain came soft that Tuesday afternoon, the kind that turns small-town streets into mirrors and makes hospital hallways hush themselves into something almost holy. Grace Miller pressed a hand to her chest as she climbed the stairs to the second floor. Just a flutter. Nothing worth mentioning. She'd been a nurse long enough to know which symptoms mattered, and which ones were simply the price of being 72 and still showing up. She signed the volunteer log, Grace Miller, 2:15 p.m., and tucked a peppermint in her cardigan pocket. Tuesdays were for puzzles and listening, for being the kind of presence that didn't rush. "Mrs. Grace?" Lily appeared beside her, sneakers blinking with tiny lights. 7 years old, braids neat, eyes full of the sort of questions adults forget to ask. "Can I show you something?" Grace smiled. "Always." They walked past the nurse's station, past charts, stacked like wishes waiting to be granted. The corridor stretched into the old wing, where the lights dimmed and the linoleum remembered decades of footsteps. Lily stopped at a pale green door. No sign, no number. "A lady went in here yesterday," Lily whispered. She looked around first like it was secret. Grace's nursing instinct stirred, the one that never quite retired. She touched the doorknob. Cool, quiet. She turned it. The room exhaled. Bookshelves leaned against faded walls, crowded with picture books loved into softness. A toy box sat open, blocks stacked like small promises. A rocking chair faced a rain-streaked window. A crocheted blanket folded on its seat in colors that felt like October. But the walls stopped Grace cold. Photographs everywhere. Taped up without frames, edges curling. Birthday cakes, veterans' caps, Sunday clothes, porch swings. And beneath them, shoeboxes stuffed with letters, addressed but never mailed, received but never answered. Grace lifted one. The handwriting was careful, determined. "Dear Mama, I'm sorry I missed your appointment. My shift changed and the bus doesn't run past 4 anymore. The copay was more than I saved. I'm trying." Grace's throat tightened. She set it down like it was made of glass. Lily cradled a stuffed rabbit with one short ear. "Someone loved this." "Still do," said a voice from the doorway. Alma Reyes stood there in her custodian's uniform. Silver hair pulled back, eyes kind from practice. She sat, her mop against the wall like she'd done this 1,000 times. "I started keeping things about 5 years back," Alma said. "A teddy bear left behind, a photo that never got claimed. Letters folks wrote but couldn't mail because the number changed or the person moved or—" She paused. "Or time. Just ran out." Grace understood immediately. The hospital moved fast. Families moved faster or couldn't move at all, trapped between jobs, between paychecks, between the pharmacy and the gas station, choosing which trip they could afford. "Does anyone know?" Grace asked quietly. Alma's smile was tired, steady. "The hospital knows I clean this hall, that's enough for now." Grace thought of her son, Thomas. 3 years of silence that started with sharp words and hardened into habit. She'd meant to call, kept meaning to. The way these families probably meant to come back, if you've ever left. Something unsaid, or wished you could gather all the lost pieces back together. Subscribe and stay with us. This story is just beginning to find its way home. Lily touched a photo of a little boy holding a birthday balloon. "Can we help?" Grace felt something unlock in her chest, not the flutter, but something warmer. Purpose. "Yes," she said firmly. "I think we're meant to." Alma pulled 3 folding chairs from behind the bookshelf as if she'd been expecting them. They sat in a small circle, rain tapping the window like a gentle drumbeat. "There are more stories here than we can count," Alma said. "But maybe we start with one, and then another." Grace nodded, already thinking. Church van schedules, pharmacy discount cards, neighbor networks, small fixes for small cracks. The kind of work that didn't make headlines, but made Tuesdays bearable. "We pull the lost threads back," Grace said. "Says, one at a time." Lily placed the rabbit in the center of their circle, its short ear standing brave. Outside, the rain grew heavier. The lights flickered once, just once, then held steady. For now. Grace arrived early Wednesday before the morning shift changed, and the hallways filled with purposeful noise. She'd barely slept. The letters kept circling her mind like prayers looking for somewhere to land. She found Alma already in the green room, sorting through a cardboard box labeled Lost and Found, 2023. Couldn't stay away either, Alma asked without looking up. Made coffee at 4:30, Grace admitted. Seemed wasteful to let it get cold alone. Alma smiled and handed her a stack of envelopes tied with grocery store twine. These were tucked behind the radiator. I think someone hid them there on purpose. Couldn't send them, couldn't throw them away. Grace untied the string. Carefully. The top envelope was addressed to Pastor Jim, Riverside Church. Inside, a note written on lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. Pastor, I know I haven't been to service in months. Mama needs me on Sundays now. It's her good day for eating. But I still pray. Does that count? Grace pressed her lips together. She knew Riverside Church. She knew Pastor Jim. And she knew exactly how much it cost to miss the one morning a week that used to feel like breathing. I want to deliver these, Grace said quietly. The ones we can. Alma nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. Lily appeared in the doorway, holding her mother's hand. Maria Thompson looked young and tired in equal measure. Nurse's scrubs under a winter coat. Name tag still clipped on from her night shift at the grocery store. Lily told me about this place, Maria said, voice cautious. I hope it's okay we came. More than okay, Grace said, standing slowly. Her chest did that flutter again, brief, insistent. She ignored it. Maria's eyes traveled the walls, landing on the photographs, the letters, the toys arranged like small altars of memory. Her expression shifted. Recognition, then something closer to pain. I left a blanket here 2 years ago, Maria said softly. My grandmother made it. Lily was in for pneumonia and we had to leave fast. My other job called, said if I didn't come in, I shouldn't come back. She swallowed. I called the hospital 6 times. Nobody knew where it went. Alma walked to the rocking chair and lifted the folded blanket. Autumn colors, careful stitches. This one? She asked. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. Lily gasped. I knew someone would come back for it, Alma said simply. Just took a while. Maria held the blanket like it was her grandmother's hand. Tears came, quiet and quick. Grace stepped forward and rested a hand on her shoulder. Not fixing, just present. We're going to do something about this, Grace said. Not a promise, a fact. We're going to make sure things find their way home. Maria wiped her eyes, nodded. I finish my shift at 7. Tomorrow. I could help then, if you need it. We need it, Alma said. Lily tugged Grace's sleeve. What do we do first? Grace looked at the boxes, the letters, the photographs of people still waiting. She thought of the church van that ran Tuesdays and Thursdays, the community center bulletin. Bored. Mrs. Kowalski, who knew everyone's phone number by heart. We make a list, Grace said. Names, addresses, what we can deliver, who we can call. She glanced at Alma. And we ask the hospital for permission to make this official. Alma raised an eyebrow. Dr. Patel's not going to like more paperwork. Dr. Patel, Grace said with the firmness of someone who'd once made residents eat lunch, is going to help whether he knows it yet or not. Maria laughed. A real one, the kind that breaks through exhaustion. Lily clapped. They spent the next hour sorting. Grace's handwriting filled 3 notebook pages. Alma labeled boxes by year. Maria folded clothes that had been left behind, checking pockets, finding coins and receipts, and one small plastic rosary. By the time the morning light turned the rain into mist, they had a plan. Small, realistic, rooted in what they could actually do. Grace stood at the window, catching her breath. The flutter was still there. She'd make an appointment. Next week. Maybe. For now, there was work. Lily placed the rabbit back in the toy box, tucking it in gently. It's not so secret anymore, she said. No, Grace agreed. Now it's something better. Outside, the hospital woke fully. Carts rolled, voices called, machines beeped their steady rhythms. And in the green room at the end of the hall, 4 people stood surrounded by things that had been lost. They were just beginning to find them. Dr. Ravi Patel had been awake for 16 hours, and his coffee had gone cold somewhere around hour 12. He stood at the nurse's station, squinting at a chart that refused to make sense, when Grace Miller appeared at his elbow holding a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone who'd already won an argument that hadn't started yet. "Dr. Patel," she said pleasantly. "Do you have a minute?" "No," he said, not looking up. "But I suspect you're going to take one anyway." Grace smiled. She'd known Ravi for 3 years, watched him work doubles and triples, seen him buy groceries for patients from his own wallet. Good man. Terrible. At asking for help. "There's a room," Grace began. "End of the old wing, green door." Ravi finally looked up. "The storage closet?" "Not exactly." She told him. Quickly, clearly. The photographs, the letters, the belongings that had slipped through the cracks because the system moved too fast and families moved too slow, or couldn't move at all. Ravi's jaw tightened. Not anger. Recognition. "How long has this been there?" he asked. 5 years, Grace said. "Give or take." He set the chart down carefully, the way you set down something fragile. "And you want to, what, make it official?" "I want to make it useful," Grace corrected. "A place families can come when they need 5 minutes of quiet, where we can hold belongings until people can come back, where volunteers can coordinate rides, medication reminders, meal deliveries." Ravi rubbed his eyes. "Grace, we barely have budget for gauze. Administration is cutting hours. I've got 3 nurses doing the work of 6. I know. We can't add programs. We can't hire staff. I'm not asking you to." He looked at her then. Really looked. She stood steady, chin up, that clipboard held like a shield made of common sense. "We've got volunteers," Grace continued. "Alma from Environmental Services, Maria Thompson. Works nights at the grocery, could help evenings. Me. And we've got community. Riverside Church has a van. The senior center has a phone tree. Mrs. Kowalski knows everyone. Mrs. Kowalski knows everyone's business." Ravi muttered, but there was affection in it. Grace didn't smile, not yet. "People are falling through the gaps, Ravi. Not because they don't care, because caring costs gas money and time off work and childcare they don't have." She paused. "This room is already happening. I'm just asking you to let it happen in the light." A nurse rushed past with a chart. An IV pump beeped. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed, the kind of tired laugh that keeps you standing. Ravi sighed. "What do you need from me?" "Permission," Grace said. "And maybe your signature on a form so the room becomes official. Community space, volunteer run. No cost to the hospital." "There's always a cost," Ravi said quietly. "Then let it be one we choose," Grace replied. He studied her, saw the steadiness in her hands, the slight flush in her cheeks, the way she held herself like someone who'd decided not to waste what was left. "One condition," Ravi said. "You get a physical, full workup, you look tired." Grace's breath caught just for a second. "I'm fine." "Grace," she met his eyes, saw the concern there, professional and personal both. "Next week," she said. "This week." "Fine." Ravi pulled a form from the desk. Rar scribbled his signature, stamped it official. "Community support room, volunteer managed. Report any issues directly to me." Grace took the paper like it was a hymn written in bureaucracy. "Thank you," she said, and meant it down to her bones. "Don't thank me yet," Ravi said, picking up his chart again. "Administration might still shut it down. Then we'll be very quiet and very useful until they forget to ask," Grace said. Ravi almost smiled. "That's what I'm afraid of." Grace turned to leave, then paused. "Ravi, when's the last time you ate?" "I'm fine." "That's what I said." He sighed. "There's a granola bar in my locker." "Eat it," Grace said firmly. "Doctor's orders." I'm the doctor. Not right now, you're not. This time he did smile. Grace walked away, permission form tucked under her arm, her heart doing that flutter again. Lighter this time, like it had remembered. Something worth beating for. Behind her, Ravi watched her go, made a mental note to check her chart, and pulled out his phone to text the nurse manager. We're keeping the green room. Long story. I'll explain later. Then he went to find that granola bar, because Grace Miller had a way of being right. That was both irritating and completely undeniable. And somewhere down the hall, in a room that was no longer secret, Alma was taping up a hand-lettered sign. Community room. Open hearts, open door. Ruth Jackson sat in the waiting area with her husband's jacket folded on her lap, though Harold was already inside for his appointment. She'd been holding it for 20 minutes, smoothing the collar the way you calm a nervous child. Grace noticed her first, the way Ruth's fingers worried the fabric, the way her eyes tracked the clock like it was stealing something. Mrs. Jackson? Grace settled into the chair beside her. Everything all right? Ruth looked up, managed a smile that didn't quite land. Oh, fine, just... She glanced toward the exam rooms. Harold gets confused when I'm not close. How long has he been in? 20 minutes. Ruth's voice went thin. They said 30 more. Grace understood immediately. Dementia made every separation feel like abandonment, every closed door a betrayal of trust. Would you like some tea? Grace offered. The community room has a kettle now, just down the hall. Ruth hesitated. I shouldn't leave. I'll let the nurse know where you are, Grace said gently. They can come get you the moment he's done. Something in Ruth's shoulders gave way. Not defeat, just the exhaustion of holding up the world alone. Tea sounds nice. The green room had transformed in 3 days. Alma had added a small table. Maria brought a donated kettle and mismatched mugs. Lily's crayon drawing of a sunshine hung beside the door. Grace poured hot water over 2 Earl Grey bags. Ruth cupped her mug like it was precious. I used to bring Harold here every week, Ruth said quietly. But the bus route changed last year. Now it only runs mornings and his appointment's at 2. She sipped carefully. My neighbor drives us, but she works most Tuesdays. So we take the senior shuttle when it's available. But you have to book 2 weeks ahead, and sometimes Harold has bad days and we miss it, and then... She stopped, breathed. Grace waited. I'm tired, Ruth said finally. Simple, true. I know, Grace said, I love him. I know that too. Ruth's eyes filled. People think when someone forgets you, you can forget them back. But you can't. You just love them louder because they can't hear it the same way anymore. Grace reached across and held Ruth's hand, warm, papery, strong. What if, Grace said slowly, we organized a volunteer driver list, people from church, from the senior center, Tuesdays and Thursdays to start, for appointments like Harold's. Ruth looked up, hope flickering cautiously. You think people would do that? I think people are waiting to be asked, Grace said. They just don't know who needs what. A soft knock interrupted them. A nurse leaned in. Mrs. Jackson, your husband's asking for you. Ruth stood quickly, steadied herself on the chair. Thank you, she whispered to Grace. For the tea, for... She gestured at the room, at the kindness in it. Come back Thursday, Grace said. Bring Harold if he's up for it. We'll have cookies. Ruth smiled, a real one this time, and hurried toward the hallway, jacket clutched close. Grace sat alone for a moment, breathing carefully past the tightness in her chest. She pulled out her notebook and wrote, Driver volunteer list, Tuesday, Thursday medical appointments, call Riverside Church, Mrs. Kowalski, Senior Center Bulletin. Then, after a pause, she added, Schedule my physical, this week, no excuses. Outside, rain started again, soft, persistent like the work ahead. Grace tucked the notebook away, stood slowly, and went to find Alma. There were cookies to plan and phone calls to make, and a whole community that didn't know yet it was about to remember how to show up. By Friday, the community room had a waiting list. Grace stood with Alma, staring at a yellow legal pad covered in names. 17 people need rides just for medical appointments, Grace said, half amazed, half worried. That's just the ones who asked, Alma pointed out, labeling a donation box. How many more didn't? Grace sat carefully in the rocking chair, that flutter in her chest making itself known. She'd made the appointment with Dr. Patel for Monday. 3 more days. Maria arrived with Lily, both carrying grocery bags. Church pantry had extras, Maria explained, unpacking canned soup, crackers, peanut butter. Sister Ann said if we're helping people get to appointments, we should help them eat too. Lily read labels carefully. This one's low sodium. Mrs. Kowalski said Mr. Fletcher needs low sodium. How do you know Mrs. Kowalski? Grace asked. She gave me a peppermint at the pharmacy and told me about Mr. Fletcher's heart and how he can't drive anymore and how the cardiologist is 40 minutes away. Mrs. Kowalski, Alma said with affection, is a menace and a blessing. The door opened. Dr. Patel stood there holding coffee and looking like he'd argued with himself about coming. I brought coffee, he said, and a problem. Grace accepted hers. And? Administration heard about the room. They want a report, attendance numbers, liability waivers, proof it's not costing money or creating risk. He sighed. I bought us 2 weeks. Grace's stomach dropped, but her voice stayed calm. Then we do it right. We get waivers. We track everything. We prove this matters. Ravi studied her, then nodded. I'll send you the forms. Send them today, Grace said. We document everything starting now. He almost smiled. You're relentless. I'm 72 and volunteer, Grace said. Relentless is all I have left. Lily giggled. Even Alma smiled. After Ravi left, the 4 of them stood surrounded by soup cans and good intentions. 2 weeks isn't much time, Maria said quietly. It's enough, Grace said, scanning the list of 17 names. We start with what we can control, waivers, calendar, check-ins, and cookies. Lily added seriously. Ruth's coming Thursday, we promised. Grace laughed, a real one, surprising herself with joy. And cookies. Alma pulled out her phone. I'll call Mrs. Kowalski. If anyone can organize 17 people in 2 weeks, it's her. Tell her we need help, Grace said. Not a miracle, just help. With Mrs. Kowalski, Alma said, dialing. You get both whether you want them or not. Grace looked at the map on the wall, at the routes drawn in marker, at the spaces between houses that volunteers would fill with presents. 2 weeks to prove a room full of lost things could become a room full of found people. Her chest tightened briefly. She pressed a hand there, breathed through it. Monday, she'd see Dr. Patel. Today, she'd make lists. Outside, the rain had stopped. Afternoon light slanted through the window, catching the paper stars Lily had hung from the ceiling. They swayed gently, like they were dancing to music only hope could hear. Mrs. Kowalski arrived Monday morning like a general inspecting troops, carrying a 3-ring binder and wearing lipstick the color of determination. Grace Miller, she announced, surveying the community room. You've started something. Grace looked up from the waiver forms she'd been organizing since 6 a.m. Good morning, Mrs. Kowalski. Don't good morning me. I've got 42 people who want to help and no idea what half of them can actually do. She dropped the binder on the table with a thump. So we're going to fix that. Alma emerged from behind a bookshelf carrying a stack of folders. 42. 43 if you count Father Miguel, but he can't drive because of the cataracts, so he's offering his church basement for sorting donations. Mrs. Kowalski flipped open the binder. I've made lists. Grace peered at the pages. Names, phone numbers, availability charts color-coded by day and time. It was beautiful and slightly terrifying. You did this since Friday? Grace asked. I did this since Saturday breakfast, Mrs. Kowalski corrected. Friday, I was gathering intelligence. She pulled reading glasses from her purse. Now, we've got 17 people needing rides. I've matched them with 12 drivers based on routes, appointment times, And who gets along with who? Who gets along? Alma repeated. Mr. Fletcher won't ride with anyone who listens to talk radio. And Mrs. Chen needs someone who doesn't mind her bringing her Yorkie. These things matter, Alma. Mrs. Kowalski tapped the page. I've also identified 8 people who need meal delivery, 6 who need pharmacy pickup, and 3 who just need someone to check on them Tuesdays because their kids work and they're too proud to say they're lonely. Grace felt her throat tighten. Not the flutter this time, but something warmer. Mrs. Kowalski, this is organized chaos, the older woman interrupted, which is better than regular chaos, but only barely. She looked at Grace over her glasses. You seeing Dr. Patel? Today? Grace blinked. How did you? I know everything, dear. It's exhausting. Mrs. Kowalski's voice softened. You go. Alma and I will handle intake this morning. I can stay. Grace. Mrs. Kowalski's tone allowed no argument. You're no good to anyone if you run yourself into the ground. Go. Get checked. Come back with a clean bill of health so I can work you like a rented mule. Alma snorted. Grace smiled despite herself. 2 o'clock, Grace admitted. The appointment. Then you have time to show me how these waivers work, Mrs. Kowalski said briskly, pulling out a pen. And to explain what administration wants in this report, because I've dealt with hospital bureaucracy before, and I know exactly how to make them happy. For the next hour, they worked. Mrs. Kowalski asked questions like a prosecutor and took notes like a court stenographer. Alma organized the donation. Boxes by category. Grace matched volunteers to needs, her handwriting filling the margins of Mrs. Kowalski's perfect charts. At 1:30, Mrs. Kowalski physically shooed Grace toward the door. Go, she commanded. And Grace, whatever Dr. Patel says, you listen. You hear me? Grace nodded, suddenly grateful and slightly afraid in equal measure. The walk to Dr. Patel's office felt longer than usual. Grace pressed a hand to her chest. The flutter was there, persistent now, like a bird trapped behind her ribs. She thought of Ruth's tired smile, of Maria's careful schedule, of Lily's paper, stars swaying in window light. She thought of Thomas, her son, 3 years of silence that she kept meaning to break. The waiting room was half full. Grace signed in, sat down, folded her hands in her lap. A nurse called her name. Grace stood slowly, breathed carefully, and walked forward. Behind her in the community room, Mrs. Kowalski was already on the phone, her voice carrying the particular authority of someone who'd decided to save the world one matched volunteer at a time. And in Grace's pocket, folded small, was a piece of paper with her son's phone number written in her own shaky handwriting. Not today, she thought, but soon. First, she had to make sure there would be enough tomorrows to matter. Dr. Patel's exam room was too bright and too quiet. Grace sat on the paper-covered table, her cardigan folded beside her, while Ravi listened to her heart with the kind of concentration that made silence feel heavy. How long? He asked, finally stepping back. Grace looked at her hands. A few weeks, maybe a month. Grace, it's just a flutter. I thought it was stress. Ravi pulled up his stool, sat down so they were eye level. It's atrial fibrillation. Your heart's rhythm is irregular. He paused, choosing words carefully. It's manageable, but it's serious. You could have a stroke if we don't treat it properly. The word stroke landed like a stone in water, heavy, rippling outward. What do I need to do? Grace asked, her voice steady even as her hands trembled slightly. Medication, daily. Blood thinner to prevent clots, beta blocker to control the rhythm. He typed notes into his tablet. And rest, Grace. Real rest. Not I'll rest when I'm done, rest. I have people counting on me. And they need you alive to count on, Ravi said gently. You can still volunteer, but 4 hours a week, not 14. You delegate, you ask for help. Grace almost laughed. I'm supposed to be the one giving help. Then help by letting others help you. He printed a prescription, handed it to her. Start these today. I want to see you back in 2 weeks. If you have chest pain, shortness of breath, or dizziness, you call 911, not me, not Alma. 911. Grace took the paper, folded it carefully. The community room. Administration wants a report in 2 weeks. The community room, Ravi said firmly, is not worth your life. It might be worth someone else's. He looked at her for a long moment. Grace, you can't save everyone. I know, she said quietly, but I can save the ones in front of me. Isn't that what you do? Ravi sighed, recognizing his own philosophy thrown back at him. Touché. He stood, helped her down from the table. 4 hours a week, I mean it. Mrs. Kowalski can run things, let her. Grace smiled slightly. Have you met Mrs. Kowalski? She was already running things before I got there. Then you're in good hands. He opened the door, paused. Grace, I'm glad you came in. Me too, she said, and meant it. The walk back to the community room felt different, slower, more deliberate. Grace stopped at the hospital chapel, sat in the back pew where the light came through stained glass in colors like old prayers. She pulled out her phone. Thomas's number was still there, saved under Son with a photo from 5 years ago. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Not yet. She wasn't ready yet, but soon. She typed a text instead. Thinking of you. Simple. True. A door left slightly open. She didn't expect a reply, but 3 minutes later her phone buzzed. Mom? You okay? Grace's eyes filled. She typed. Carefully. Yes. Just wanted you to know. A pause. Then, can I call you tomorrow? Yes. Please. Grace sat in the chapel for another 10 minutes, letting the tears come quiet and clean. Then she dried her face, straightened her shoulders, and walked back to the community room. Mrs. Kowalski looked up from the volunteer schedule. Well, a fib, Grace said simply. Medication, 4 hours a week maximum. Mrs. Kowalski nodded once, decisive. Then you're on coordination only. No lifting, no driving. You manage the schedule, answer questions, drink tea. She softened slightly. And you let us take care of you for once. Alma appeared with a mug of chamomile, already made. Lily looked up from coloring. Are you sick, Mrs. Grace? Grace sat down carefully, accepted the tea. My heart's a little tired, sweetheart, but the doctor's helping it rest. Like a nap? Lily asked. Exactly like a... But Lily nodded, satisfied, and returned to her drawing. A house with a green door and stars all around it. Grace sipped her tea, watching the three of them work. Mrs. Kowalski updating charts, Alma sorting donations, Lily adding careful details to her crayon sky. Her phone was warm in her pocket. Tomorrow, Thomas would call, and in 2 weeks they'd show administration that a small green room and a handful of determined people could hold more hope than any budget line could measure. For now, Grace rested and let herself be held. Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear. Grace sat by the window, coffee untouched, watching the clock. Thomas was supposed to call at 9. 3 years of silence. Not angry, just the slow drift that happens when hurt goes unspoken and days become years. She'd missed his calls after the funeral. He'd stopped trying. At 8:59, Grace picked up the phone. It rang at exactly 9. Mom, Thomas said, his voice careful, warm underneath. Tommy, she breathed. A pause. You said you were thinking of me. I was. I am. I'm sorry I disappeared. Mom, Dad died. You were grieving. So were you, she interrupted gently. And I left you alone in it. Silence stretched between them, full of 3 years of unsaid things. I wanted to help, Thomas said finally, but you wouldn't let me. I didn't know how to be helped, Grace admitted. I only knew how to keep moving. Are you still moving? Grace thought of the community room, of Mrs. Kowalski's charts, of her irregular heartbeat. I'm trying to move differently now. She told him everything. The green room, the volunteers, Dr. Patel's diagnosis, the 17 people who needed rides to appointments they couldn't reach alone. Thomas listened without interrupting. Mom, he said. When she finished, you're building a community center in a hospital closet while your heart's acting up? When you say it like that, it sounds unwise. It sounds exactly like you. His voice held exasperation and pride both. But you have to take care of yourself. I'm trying 4 hours a week, 4 hours a eye, medication, rest, and someone making sure you actually rest? Grace smiled. Mrs. Kowalski is a force of nature. Thomas laughed, really laughed, and Grace felt something unlock in her chest. I'd like to visit, Thomas said quietly. If that's okay. When? This weekend, Saturday morning? Yes. Grace said, yes, I'd love that. They talked for 20 more minutes. His teaching job, her wild garden, the neighbor's dog, normal things, precious things. When they hung up, Grace cried the good kind of tears. By 10 o'clock, she was at the hospital. Mrs. Kowalski had organized the morning shifts. Alma was meeting with Father Miguel. Maria had recruited 2 more drivers. You look different, Mrs. Kowalski observed. My son's visiting Saturday, Grace said simply. Mrs. Kowalski's expression softened. Good, about time. Lily bounded in with a folder. I made something for the report. Hand-drawn charts showing their impact. 17 riders, 8 meal deliveries, 6 pharmacy pickups, 3 wellness checks, all illustrated in careful crayon. Administration likes numbers, Lily explained, but numbers need pictures so people remember they're about real humans. Grace hugged her. You're absolutely right. Dr. Patel appeared, exhausted but pleased. 43 volunteers now. 45, Mrs. Kowalski corrected, and I've drafted the report. Grace read through the meticulous documentation, attendance logs, volunteer hours, testimonials, cost savings. It was thorough, professional, undeniable. It's perfect, Grace said. Of course it is, Mrs. Kowalski replied. Ravi picked up Lily's drawings. Can we include these? Absolutely, Grace said. They're the heart of it. Grace left at 2, 4 hours exactly. Mrs. Kowalski walked her out. Tell your son we're taking good care of you, she said. I will. And Grace, I'm proud of you for calling him. Grace squeezed her hand. Thank you for letting me rest. Someone has to keep you alive. Might as well be me. Grace walked to her car slowly. The flutter was quieter today, medication working or maybe just hope. Settling into rhythm. Saturday, Thomas would come. In 1 week, they'd present the report. And somewhere between medication and delegation and letting herself be helped, Grace was learning that moving differently didn't mean stopping. It meant trusting others to carry what you couldn't hold alone. Thomas arrived at 11 with a bakery box and uncertainty in his eyes. Grace opened the door, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Mother and son, separated by 3 years and 3 feet of doorway. Hi, Mom, he said. Hi, baby, she whispered, and pulled him into a hug that made up for 1,000 missed phone calls. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe she'd gotten smaller. His hair had more gray. He smelled like his father's cologne, and that almost broke her. I brought sandwiches, Thomas said when they finally let go. And those lemon cookies you like. You remembered. I remember everything, Mom. They sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd done homework and she'd taught him to make pie crust, and they'd eaten silent dinners after the funeral. The house looks good, Thomas said, though they both knew it looked exactly the same, frozen in time like a museum to before. I haven't changed much, Grace admitted. Couldn't figure out what to keep and what to let go. Thomas unwrapped sandwiches slowly. Tell me more about the community room. So Grace did. About finding the green door. About Alma's quiet strength and Maria's careful hope. About Lily's paper stars and Mrs. Kowalski's fierce organization. About Ruth and Harold and 17 others who just needed someone to show up. And Dr. Patel? Thomas asked. He's looking after you? He's looking after everyone, Grace said. Including me, whether I like it or not. Thomas, you smiled. I like him already. They ate in comfortable quiet, the kind that only comes when silence isn't a weapon. I want to see it, Thomas said finally. The room, if that's okay. Grace's heart stumbled. Really? Mom, you've built something that matters. Of course I want to see it. Sunday. Afternoon, Grace brought Thomas to the hospital. The community room was busy, Mrs. Kowalski reviewing schedules with volunteers, Alma sorting donations, Maria helping someone fill out transportation forms. Lily spotted Thomas first. Are you Mrs. Grace's son? I am, Thomas said, crouching to her level. Are you the artist? Lily beamed. I made the charts for administration, want to see? She pulled him to the wall where her illustrated report hung, numbers transformed into stories through crayon and care. Thomas studied them carefully. These are incredible, Lily. You made the data human. That's what Mrs. Grace said. Lily grabbed his hand. Come see the donation boxes. I organize them by size and season. Grace watched her son let himself be led around the small room, listened to him ask questions, and offer genuine praise. Mrs. Kowalski cornered him by the tea kettle. You're the son, she announced. Guilty, Thomas said. Your mother's a stubborn woman. I'm aware. She doesn't rest enough. I'm working on that. Mrs. Kowalski studied him with her sharp eyes. You'll do, she decided. Make sure she takes her medication. Yes, ma'am. Grace watched this exchange with something between amusement and love. Dr. Patel arrived for his usual Sunday check-in, stopped short seeing Thomas. You must be the son, Ravi said, extending his hand. Thomas, you must be the doctor keeping my mother alive. Trying to, Ravi said. She's not always cooperative. That's genetic, Thomas said, glancing at Grace. The three of them stood there, doctor, son, and stubborn woman, and something settled into place that had been missing. Later, as Thomas prepared to leave, he pulled Grace aside. Mom, this place, what you're doing, it's important, but so is your health. I know. Do you? Because you've spent 3 years running from grief, and now you're running toward purpose, and I'm worried you don't know how to just be. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. I'm learning. Then let me help you learn. Thomas took her hands. I want to be part of your life again. Not just weekend visits, real conversations, regular calls. I'd like that, Grace whispered. And Mom, Dad would be proud of you. For this room, for helping people. But he'd also want you to take care of yourself. Grace nodded, couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Thomas hugged her goodbye. The door. I'll call Tuesday and Thursday and probably Saturday again. That's a lot of calls. We have 3 years to make up for, he said simply. Grace watched him drive away, then returned to the community room where her found family was waiting. Mrs. Kowalski handed her tea without a word. Alma squeezed her shoulder. Lily showed her a new drawing, a woman with gray hair surrounded by stars and people holding hands. That's you, Mrs. Grace, Lily said, in the middle of everything. Grace looked at the drawing, at the room, at the faces of people who'd become her purpose and her family both. She was in the middle of everything, and for the first time in 3 years that felt exactly like where she was supposed to be. Monday morning, Grace and Mrs. Kowalski walked into the administration conference room, carrying Hope in a 3-ring binder. 5 administrators sat across the long table, their faces professionally neutral. Grace recognized the CFO, the director of operations, a lawyer, and 2 others whose titles she'd forgotten in her nervousness. Dr. Patel stood by the window, technically there as medical liaison, but really there as their advocate. Mrs. Miller, the CFO began, Mrs. Kowalski, thank you for coming. We've reviewed your preliminary report. And? Mrs. Kowalski asked, never one for patience. It's impressive, the director admitted. 45 volunteers, 63 patients served in 2 weeks, documented reduction in missed appointments, 0 cost to the hospital, Mrs. Kowalski added, and measurable community goodwill. The lawyer leaned forward. The liability concerns remain. If something happens during a volunteer transport, we have waivers. Grace interrupted gently, sliding papers across the table. Every volunteer, every participant, reviewed by Father Miguel's church attorney free of charge. The lawyer blinked, took the papers. We've also established protocols, Mrs. Kowalski continued, flipping to a tabbed section. Driver vetting, emergency contacts, check-in procedures, everything. Documented. The CFO exchanged glances with the director. You've been thorough. We've been necessary, Grace said quietly. The people we serve, they're falling through every other crack in the system. We're not asking for money or resources, just permission to keep helping. Ravi spoke from the window. For what it's worth, I've seen measurable improvement in patient outcomes. People are making appointments, taking medications, following up, because someone showed up for them. Silence filled the room. The director opened a folder, pulled out Lily's illustrated charts. These are remarkable. Did a child make these? Lily Chen, she's 8, Grace said. Her mother volunteers. Lily comes after school and reminds us that numbers represent people. The director studied the careful crayon drawings, stick figures holding hands, hearts around appointment schedules, stars marking successful rides. This one, she said, pointing to a chart, shows Mr. Fletcher made his cardiologist appointment for the first time in 18 months. Because Mrs. Kowalski drove him, Grace confirmed. And now his heart failure is managed. He's not in the ER every month. The CFO pulled out a calculator, started running numbers. If we're preventing even a few ER visits per month, the room pays for itself in cost avoidance, the director finished, not to mention community benefit for our non-profit status. The lawyer set down the waivers. These are solid. I don't see liability. Exposure beyond normal volunteer programs. The administrators looked at each other in that silent communication of people who've already made a decision but need to perform deliberation. Mrs. Miller, the CFO said finally, Mrs. Kowalski, we'd like to make the community room an official hospital. Volunteer program. Grace's heart stuttered. The good kind this time. Official status means insurance coverage, institutional support, and a small operational budget. The director continued. We'd ask you to continue coordinating with quarterly reports to this committee. We can do that, Mrs. Kowalski said, her voice suspiciously thick. There's one condition, the lawyer added. Mrs. Miller, given your recent health diagnosis, you'll need a co-coordinator, someone to share the workload. I've already recruited 3, Mrs. Kowalski said briskly. Alma Rodriguez, Maria Chen, and Father Miguel. We're not letting Grace kill herself with kindness. Ravi smiled at the window. The director stood, extended her hand. Welcome to the official family, ladies. Let's help some people. Grace shook her hand, feeling tears threaten. Mrs. Kowalski gripped her arm, steadying her. That afternoon, they gathered everyone in the community room, all 45 volunteers, the patients they'd served, Lily with fresh drawings, Thomas on speakerphone from 3 hours away. We did it, Grace announced. The room is official. Cheers erupted. Alma hugged Maria. Lily jumped up and down. Mrs. Kowalski dabbed her eyes with a tissue she'd deny having. Ruth raised a trembling hand. Does this mean more cookies? So many cookies, Grace promised, laughing and crying at once. That evening, Grace sat in the quiet room after everyone left. The green door stood open, welcoming. The paper stars Lily had hung months ago still danced in the window light. Her phone buzzed. Thomas, proud of you, Mom. Dad would be too. Grace typed back, couldn't have done it without finding my way back to you. She took her evening medication, felt her heart settle into its medicated rhythm. Not perfect, but steady. Enough. Tomorrow, Mrs. Kowalski would arrive with new volunteer schedules. Alma would organize another donation drive. Maria would transport 3 people to appointments. Lily would add more stars to the ceiling. And Grace would be there, 4 hours no more, helping people find what they'd lost, including herself. She turned off the lights, closed the green door gently. On the other side, someone had taped a handwritten sign. Community room. All welcome. Hope spoken here. Grace touched it once, then walked down the hospital corridor toward home. Behind her, the stars kept dancing, and the green door waited, patient and open for tomorrow's lost things to find their way home.